Under the Scope.
Hey everybody, Jared and Shane here for another Scope movie review.
Yes.
The weather is cold, the sky is dark, and we just got out of a sneak preview of the sequel to Trainspotting, Jared, appropriately called T2
Trainspotting.
I don't know if it's appropriately called that, but that's what the name of it is, Jared. It's based off of the sequel book, Porno, and apparently
I didn't realize there was a book.
There was,
Okay.
yes. Loosely based, from what I understand, but based off it nonetheless.
Yeah.
This is the further adventures of our Trainspotting trio plus one bad guy.
Yeah, we've got Mark Renton, played by Ewan McGregor. You've got Sick Boy Simon, played by Johnny Lee Miller. You've got, I guess his name is Daniel. We always just know him as Spud. Ewan Bremer. And then, of course, our bad guy is Begbie, played by Robert Carlyle. You've got a cameo appearance by Kelly MacDonald.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the film was directed by Danny Boyle again. Yeah.
The whole crew is back.
The whole gang is back.
So I posted that we were going to see this movie, Jared,
Okay.
on social media, which is interesting because social media does play a small, interesting part in this film.
Yeah, a little bit.
And someone asked the question, I don't understand why this movie was made. So
It's a fair question.
So yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, I suppose first we should get into the plot of the story. Why all these people are back together after the events that took place 20 years prior. So I'll let you dish as much as you feel you need to do, and then we'll dig in.
I mean, there's not.
Yeah.
It's a sketchy setup. I mean, not in that it's a bad setup, but it's very simple. I think it's Mark Renton's mother passes, right?
Yep.
And so he's been obviously living abroad for the last 20 years. Turns out he's been living in Amsterdam after taking all the money from their big caper at the end of Trainspotting.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes back, visits with his father, and we sort of catch up with all of our other characters. Begbie, unsurprisingly, has been locked up in prison.
Yep.
Spud apparently had an okay life for a while. Had a wife, or at least a female with whom he procreated. He's got a wee lad. But through some unfortunate circumstances, he's sort of fallen back on the hard times. He's back using again and finds himself living in, I guess, government housing.
Yep. Sort of squalor-esque.
And Simon, Sick Boy, is only mentioned like once or twice. So he goes by Simon now because he's a respectable adult, sort of. He's sort of resorted to, I guess, ostensibly he's running his mother's pub, but also doing a variety of other petty crimes to keep afloat.
Blackmail and all sorts of stuff.
Yep.
He's got an attractive
He's got
girlfriend.
dreams. He's got dreams of running his own sauna.
He does. And he's mad at Mark for running out on him.
Yes, he is. Of course, because Mark ran out on
Everyone
him.
was mad at him.
They're all mad
pretty
at
much.
Mark.
Yeah.
His new girlfriend, whose name is Veronica, she's plays a key role in this. They're girlfriend, but they're sort of not girlfriend and boyfriend. It's sort of a weird relationship, and Mark sort of dovetails into that too once he shows up. After he and Simon have their big blowout in their first meeting, they sort of rekindle their friendship. And part of the story that how it gets shown is that you sort of have these moments where it flashes back to them as younger children. Not just, you see parts from the first film, but you also see parts from them even further in the past.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, you're sort of looking at a couple different eras of time during the course of this film. So inevitably there's going to be some sort of hijinks. There's probably going to be another crime caper.
Begbie's pissed, and he breaks out of jail, and he finds out that Mark's out there, and he's going to do him in.
Right. Begbie's never been a very deep character, and that continues to be true.
Yeah.
Spud continues to be fairly innocent for the most part, and the other two are friends when they need to be, enemies when they need to be, and definitely have their own motivations.
Yes. Both can be assholes. Both can be...
And if you were wondering, yes, heroin does make an appearance, but also its friend cocaine.
A lot of coke in this. Yeah. So, Jared, this movie is yet another retro, capitalizing on nostalgia type of film.
Right.
I mean, we are literally seeing something new every month, every week. I was going to say once. So it's a week and a month.
It's a new unit of time here in the New Republic.
But I mean, so you can draw direct parallels to, I mean, shows like Fuller House.
Yep.
You can make parallels to Star Wars. You can make it to just about every movie because what's old is new again.
Yep.
This movie is very much aware of what it is.
Agreed.
So then the question is there enough story here? Is there enough interest to revisit these people 20 years later and tell a tale that is awash in nostalgia? I mean, keep in mind that the original Trainspotting, we were talking about it before, was a seminal movie for us.
Absolutely.
It was a trend-setting movie of 1995 it came out, right?
Yep. Not only the music, but
everything.
Ewan McGregor was the first time we really saw him in anything.
I mean, he was in Shallow Grave before this, right?
Right.
But I mean, this was the movie that broke him.
Introduction. Danny Boyle, again, Shallow Grave, but also, this was really what put him on the map, and he eventually would become a Academy Award-winning director.
Yeah, so. I mean, and this movie came on the heels of the second British invasion with Blur and Oasis and the Stone Roses. I mean, it was just a moment in time where everything British was cool again. So you get into this movie and it's like a bunch of middle-aged guys, and I'm not even saying it in a bad way.
Right.
But
that's
saying,
what it is.
I'm saying, yeah.
There isn't that edginess anymore. There isn't that young heroin chic people running around town getting into hijinks.
No,
I mean these are middle-aged men, and they've had some hard times.
Yeah, and they're thinking, and they're also thinking about those times. I mean, it's interesting as I get older, and maybe when you get older, you sort of think about the glory days of the past and all of that stuff. I mean, if you want to call their running around in heroin. And nearly losing their lives and whatever, and being hooked on smack, the glory days. But I mean, it is
skag, Shane. They call it skag.
It's interwoven into this film in an interesting way. I mean, through flashbacks or like in the background, and how the old movie is sort of in the new movie, and they're looking back.
I mean, the film. You mentioned nostalgia. The film is. The way it's constructed is very nostalgic. I mean, we flash back to the original film. We see a lot of restaging of scenes or at least shots from the original film. So as an audience, we're experiencing the nostalgia of seeing the first film.
Yeah.
Characters are also experiencing nostalgia of their own youth. So yeah, there's definitely different layers of nostalgia. And if that's not your thing, you're definitely going to be having a hard time with this movie.
And I do think that was intentional. I think that Boyle, and I can't remember who wrote it, but I mean, clearly that they weren't just going back to do the greatest hits of what Trainspotting was before. I mean, it's there, but I think that there's always an awareness of what they're doing.
Sure.
But again, the movie does lack. I mean, you're looking back at that edginess through rose-tinted glasses and nostalgia. So it is a totally different movie than what the first one was in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a whole thread of melancholy that runs through this, a sadness.
There's this. I mean, most of these characters, well, all of these characters really have sort of hit this arrested development phase where they haven't really done anything with their lives, even though it apparently, like Renton, initially we think maybe he got away and he made good on his life and he's doing some good stuff.
Yeah.
Turns out maybe not. Maybe he never really did run away from his past like he had hoped. Everyone's sort of stuck in the same place and hasn't really figured out a way to break out.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah, and grow up and really live a fully mature adult life. They're all just taking it day by day and kind of taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, maybe even 4 steps back.
Yeah. So the question is then, Jared, we go back to that. Is this a movie that needed to be made?
Part of me says yes, and part of me says no.
Yeah.
I won't say that I didn't enjoy watching this movie, because I did. It was fun to spend some time with these characters again. There's just a certain joy to Spud's innocence. It's fun to see sort of the malevolence of Simon, and the sort of you always want to root for Mark to succeed, even if he doesn't. Yeah.
But he is just the smarter, more charismatic asshole of the group. Like, you think that he's a good guy, but in a lot of ways he isn't. He's no better. He's just smart enough to get away with the stuff.
And Begbie, maybe I almost could have done without Begbie.
Yeah.
But I guess it's nice to have him there just to complete the set. But,
yeah. I mean, you get a bit of redemption, a bit of humanizing him at the end.
I guess.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, it might even felt false. And the other thing is that you sort of have this whole thing of Spud trying to recover because he is the one, junkie trying to better himself. Mm-hmm. And so he ends up kind of writing the stories of what they went through,
right.
Which essentially is sort of this meta take on, what the original Trainspotting book was. Because I don't know if you ever read the original book, but it's very much written like Spud was writing it.
Okay.
It's very colloquial and hard to understand.
So he's kind of recounting the tales of what they got up to in
It's
their
like
youth.
folding it on itself.
Yeah.
To me, it might have been a little too much on the nose.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Spud is such a likable character that you sort of give him a pass on that.
So on the other hand, do I feel like this film needed to happen? A little bit I don't. Because I don't know that it necessarily does a lot of new or with the characters or with the material. It just sort of feels like more of the same 20 years later.
Yeah.
Honestly. I felt like I was kind of waiting for that moment where the film would sort of take a pivot and go, okay, this is really something new and fresh. It never really did that for me. It just felt like it sort of went down a predictable path. Maybe the exact story beats and details weren't anticipated, but you could kind of feel where it was going in the end.
And it's certain a lot of that was just following the same pattern of the first movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could, and I'm not protecting the story or defending it necessarily, but I don't know if you could do something completely different with this because it was all about men repeating the mistakes of their past and also being hung up on the mistakes of their past.
Yeah.
And where you always sort of fall back to, what your natural state is. And for most of these guys in this film, their natural state is not being great. Their natural state is making those mistakes.
Yeah, so in the end, it ends up being kind of depressing that these people will never really break out of the cycle.
Yeah, you hope maybe Spud figures it out, but I mean, we noticed, 20 years later, a lot of these guys are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know, would the movie have been better if they all get together 20 years later and they meet at an Applebee's in London and they're all sort of normal guys, like they sort of got out of it?
That's not interesting either.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Like I do like these characters. I liked a bit of the warm and fuzzy that you got in this film.
Right.
But at the same
they're
time,
definitely not the how do you want to say this? I mean, they've mellowed.
Yeah.
So you and I are probably similar in age to these characters.
Yeah, a little bit younger, but in the same ballpark.
So we can kind of relate to that whole passage of time and sort of the edges have been worn off of our character.
Yeah.
But not that we were that edgy to begin with. But you get my meaning.
A fine smoothing of the corners. Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. It's in some ways it was pointless. In some ways, it was nice to go back and revisit it. I think the movie was done well.
Absolutely.
Visually, it was impressive. The echoes of the past were done in an interesting way. The music is always interesting, of both the old and the new.
I think there was a lot of interesting filmmaking technique involved when it came to sort of setting the mood for a particular sequence. Obviously, you've got the past versions of them, which are sort of this really aged 8mm looking film stock. There were a couple scenarios where just different moods were required, and the filmmaking went to change and accordingly to really support the narrative that way. So
how they integrated the old footage of the movie, where you're seeing things from different angles. Sometimes you are seeing the footage. It was an interesting take on it. Like, I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Again, it's hitting that nostalgia bone every single time.
It makes me want to go watch the original again.
Yeah, like, okay, how do they work as bookends?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not completely disappointed by it, but
I'm not blown away like it was from the original. But honestly,
you're never going to be.
That's not even I can't expect that.
Yeah, I sort of think that you have to come out of this movie kind of like how the characters came out of their stories, which is the past is never going to be, the same, and you're never going to feel that same way about it in the present.
Damn it.
And you sort of have to get over
Now
that.
you're making me like the film more.
Yeah,
Not that I hated the film.
I think it's...
I just think, I think when you put it that way, it sort of feels like the film was what it should have been to sort of convey that particular moment.
Yeah, I mean,
mindset.
Are these guys really going to be in these weird capers? I mean, even in the first Trainspotting, that whole thing was a bit over the top. So you have a bit of that. So it's not like you're playing with the real world.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a little bit strange. But, sorry.
You got somewhere to be?
Yes, I got somewhere to be. Why do you keep checking your effing watch? The thing about it is, and I'm going to leave it at this, and then maybe we go into a score, is that a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows that are doing this nostalgia thing, they're doing it with, the idea that maybe they want to capitalize on something, strike while the iron's hot. You can get people interested in, you can tell stories of these characters, and it feels good, and it feels warm and fuzzy because it's something you're familiar with. In this movie, I do have to say is I feel like it is a statement about that.
Yeah.
And it is a statement that is a little bit more deep and a little bit more complicated than Uncle Jesse and Michelle and Dave Coulier getting back together.
It's definitely not.
That's what I think.
It's definitely not a reboot of the franchise.
No.
This isn't going to spring forth a whole new series of Trainspotting films.
No.
It's just...
Maybe it's a Trainspotting midlife crisis.
Yeah.
I don't know. So let's ponder that, Jared, and then let's give it a score.
The Scope score is 3 stars.
All right, we're giving it 3 because Jared says it's Trainspotting.
That's a solid B.
Solid B.
I think if you're a fan of the original, you'll definitely want to watch this for sure. If you haven't seen the original, probably go see that first.
And if you're younger than us or the original did not strike you the way that it struck us, it's probably not going to be a B film for you.
No, probably not.
One other thing, Jared, like the first movie, you've really got to pay attention because there is heavy accent action in this.
Oh, yes.
And also heavy culturally relevant stuff for that part of the world. So there are things that we did not understand.
I thought it was interesting that really our first speaking part in the film was Begbie, with the thickest Scottish accent in the entire film.
What is this guy saying?
My goodness. I think they subtitled some of it in the original release, didn't they?
And
some of the more difficult stuff.
And my wife says that she saw it, I think she saw it in the theater, or she rented it, and literally had to watch it again immediately with the subtitles on because she had no idea what they were saying. So she would have struggled a little bit, but as the movie went on, you got used to it.
And I've always been pretty good at picking up on people's accents, so...
Well, aren't we special? Maybe
I am special.
Maybe that could be its own Scope episode. Jared picks up on accents. No?
Let's not do that.
Okay, so instead of doing that, Jared, tell our listeners, tell our viewers how they can communicate with us.
Well, you can like, comment, and subscribe right down there.
Subscribe means what exactly?
That means you subscribe to the YouTube channel or the podcast. I'm pointing at things on the podcast and you can't see it.
Exactly. In other words, you subscribe and then you set it and...
Forget it. Or hit the little bell so you don't forget it.
Never forget it. Okay, so there we go. One movie out of the way in 2017, Jared. It's very, very exciting. We've got many more movies to come. We've got more Scope to come. So until then, Jared, bye for now.